Midnight on Earth podcast with your host, Jake Weaver. Engineered by Cedric Swan. Hey everybody, we are back with another episode of Midnight on Earth. I'm your host, Jake Weaver, and we're here to bring you more knowledge, more light, and more love. We have an incredible guest this week. All of our guests are so good. We bring you the best guests. This incredible woman is no different. We have Mona Sobhani here. She wrote an incredible book about her journey from being a scientist to grasping these high-frequency concepts. It's absolutely incredible. It's called Proof of Spiritual Phenomena, and we're going to talk to her in just a second. But first, I need you to do something for me. Go to patreon.com/midnightonearth. That's right. We have a Patreon page now where you can go to give me your direct support. There are different tiers of support. When you go to that website, you can choose a tier that suits you the best, the tier that you can accept, that you can integrate into your life, because I'm giving everything to make sure this gets out there more, to make this podcast expand with your help by allowing your monetary energy to power this. It's like a battery. The more energy, the more it expands. You're actually directly helping the human race. And with your direct support, we can get this really good information out there, this really evolutionary information out to more people. We need it to get out. We need to evolve, all of us. So help me, people. Go there. Patreon.com/midnightonearth. And when you're done with that, follow me on Instagram at midnight_on_earth. That is the address. You can follow us there. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you go to get your podcasts, click that button that connects us so you know when somebody incredible like Mona's coming on. You get that notification right to your phone or whatever device right away. It's instant. It's omnipresent, perhaps. And of course, tell a friend. Tell someone that you know that loves these type of podcasts. You know them, you know their frequency, you know my frequency. Match our frequencies for me. Do that for me. Bring them here, midnightonearth.com. Okay, well, we're just about to talk to Mona, but we're going to read her bio. So here we go. Mona Sobhani, Ph.D., is a cognitive neuroscientist, author, and entrepreneur. A former research scientist at the University of Southern California, she holds a doctorate in neuroscience from the University of Southern California and completed a post-doctoral fellowship at Vanderbilt University with the MacArthur Foundation Law and Neuroscience Project. She is the author of Proof of Spiritual Phenomena, a Neuroscientist's Discovery of the Ineffable Mysteries of the Universe, which is what we talk about constantly. This is our bread and butter here, and she's here. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, Vox, and other media outlets. And currently she lives in Los Angeles, and we are so blessed to have her here. Hello, Mona.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Wow, what a book you wrote. This is just incredible. I love it when I read guest books because I develop this connection with the story, especially when there's so many resonant concepts that we talk about here on this show. Tell us about this. So you were a very three-dimensional person. Your world was in the third dimension. You were not including information from other places. Tell me about that part of your life.
Yeah, I am a cognitive neuroscientist, and I was a, believer in that the universe is random and mechanistic. the things they teach you in school and in graduate school for sure. And I think when I was younger, I was a little more open to the mysteries of the universe, just kind of like, oh, it's such a miracle that we're here. And sometimes I would have these crazy coincidences happen in college and I would wonder about them. But then as I went through graduate training, and particularly in neuroscience, they train you that the brain is a coincidence detector. So the reason you think things are related to each other or are coincidences is because your brain is literally looking for those coincidences. Like it's always looking for meaning and tying things together. So they taught us that. They told us that, all meaning is created in the human brain. Like there's no external meaning in the world. Nothing has inherent meaning. It's all created from us. So, you go through this training and they never take a step back to explain that scientific materialism is a philosophy and that that's what science is based on, and that there's other philosophies, but that we are, they never explain there's no philosophy of science. So you just kind of learn it as though, like somebody must have tested this and deemed it as the truth and reality. And so now you believe it. So then I operated in that framework.
Well, I do want to back you up a little bit because you were a very rationally, like I said, third dimensional focused human. However, there were parts of your life where the strange, the metaphysical showed up. You discovered Wicca before high school. And of course, your mother's coffee readings. Like, let's tell our audience about this, because I'm going to be completely honest. I mean, I knew about tea leaf reading, right? Like that's pretty common. I did not know that some cultures on Earth could read coffee grounds, the coffee grounds at the bottom of a coffee cup, and extrapolate very accurate information about the past, present, and future. Can you enlighten us a little bit about that and your experiences with that, with your mother and your grandmother being so powerful in that way as well?
Yeah. So I'm Persian, and our culture and a lot of other Middle Eastern cultures, I know, like Greek, Turkish, Armenian, we have this kind of thicker coffee. It's not like American coffee. It's like a thicker kind of coffee that you leave it in the cup, the grounds in the cup, you drink the coffee, and then you leave the grounds in, you flip the cup over, let it dry, and then images emerge, like pictures. It looks like sludge. I think I put a picture of it in the book.
Oh, yes.
But so it's like, and then you have somebody who's a reader look at the picture look at the grounds and try to tell a story. They try to look for symbols, really, is what it is. My mom says, if you see a snake, it could mean an enemy or it could mean money. If you see a turtle, it means something is developing or slowly, right? Because turtles are like slow. And she learned the symbolism from her mom, who presumably learned it from her own mother. My grandmother was a really great reader, and my mom inherited the gift, and she would do it for, family members, family friends at our family parties. And it was always there. I never paid attention to it at all. And until when I was in graduate school, I would come home on the weekends and we would have coffee together. And then my mom would, kind of absentmindedly start reading the cup to me. And I remember, it's not that I didn't believe it or not believe it. I just would listen. I didn't take notes at first. I would just listen. But then I noticed, since this happened every week, that some of the things that she said would start coming true. And so then I started taking notes. And I was like, because I couldn't remember. I'd be like, did I remember that correctly? Or, I don't know. Right. So I was like, I'll just take notes. So then I started taking notes and realized that she was more right than she was wrong. Or when she was right, it was like really right. Like it would be on multiple variables about something there's no way that she could know that was going on in my life, usually about things that I wouldn't even know were going on that would then unfold months later. And that's what I found really interesting is she would, say things related to, let's say, work, where even I wouldn't know it was coming down the pipeline. So there's no way she could know. And so those things really caught my attention, and I didn't know how it worked, especially the symbolism, because in science, we reduce everything to atoms and molecules. So symbols didn't make any sense to me because that would mean that they have an inherent meaning, and that would went against my paradigm, so I couldn't understand it. Like, and periodically I would try to think about the mechanism behind the readings, like what could be going on, but I didn't have a lot of knowledge about this field, so I just didn't really have a way to put words to it, or a way to even think about it.
But you didn't dismiss it, though. That's the thing. Like, you definitely trusted your mother. I mean, you felt like that was accurate information. So regardless of how your mind developed as you went, in the field of science, you still kind of had that in the back of everything, that true knowledge.
And it was a matter of fact that it worked.
Right.
And I think that's what really did it for me. I mean, the other thing is, like, it felt like I was paying my mom. It's not like she was trying to impress me. It was this unique relationship where I knew what she knew and what she could and could not know. And she was not trying to, again, impress me or put on a show. So it was this kind of unique relationship where I was like, the things she says are matter of fact, come true. And so I don't know how, but it works. And I just kind of accepted it. And
yes, in the book, you relate some of those stories, and there's a lot of detail in certain situations, enough to give you the sense that there is information, accurate information, coming from somewhere that's not linear, right?
Yeah.
So like you knew that was real. Like whatever that is, you couldn't define it. Maybe you thought about the mechanics behind it, but it was still outside of most people's minds to really grasp it, especially you at that time. So even though, like I said, you made that leap towards science, that was always a part of you. So that's really interesting to think about it that way.
That's true.
And then The Secret, right? Wasn't that a big part of your life? The Rhonda Byrne movie, The Secret, or did you discover the book first?
Well, I think I don't know. I think I read it. Oh, okay. I don't think I bought it, though. I think one of my friends had bought it and she gave it to me and I read it. And then it was huge in the culture at the time. So you couldn't avoid it. I'm sure Oprah had her on the show or something. I don't know. But
it was everywhere.
It was everywhere. And I just remember everyone was talking about it. And the book is it's just quotes, really. Like, if I remember it quickly, I remember there wasn't a lot of it was just like words and a few quotes and pictures. But the concept behind it, I remember, like when I was a kid, when I was into Wicca and stuff, I would, for fun, imagine things that I wanted. And like when my parents were looking for a house, I remember, and my mom always reminds me of this, like for some reason I had written down something about some part of the new house having blue in it. And I don't even remember why I wrote that. But anyway, the house we ended up getting, and I didn't show that to my parents, right? It was like my secret in my notebook and my, the thing I did in my room by myself when I was 12. And then when they bought a new house, the shutters on the home were blue. And I remember I showed it to my mom, and she was, I know this is a silly example, but she was really like, oh my God, she didn't use the word manifest, but she said oh, you kind of helped it come true or something. And so I think because of that, I think that my mom does believe in, imagining what you want and putting it in your mind space, if you will, in your psyche, so that it, you can either manifest it, whether it's metaphysical or it primes your brain's attention network or whatever, you can help bring it to fruition. So because I kind of had that, I think that The Secret, even though I recognized from a scientific standpoint, I was like, I don't know if any of this is true. I didn't know physics. I didn't know physics in depth or quantum physics, any of that, but it kind of resonated on some level. I was like, I really do think if you, whether it's neuroscientifically, psychologically, or metaphysically, that if you write things down and, feel with emotion and focus on those things, you're more likely to bring them into your life. So it resonated.
Wow. So, okay. So that's the thing. So you really were secretly, you were this scientist person, but behind the scenes, you still had all these other experiences. So you did have that foundation, which is super cool because that helped you, I think, right? Because like you said, belief affects behavior. That's such an incredible power that we have as humans, because that creative force, that energy that we're in this body, whatever that is, that's connected to the primary creative force, which I don't know what that is. It's a mystery, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Even though, like you said, you don't like mysteries.
I'm more open to mysteries now. But I think that I think when you actually learn more and more about neuroscience, I remember thinking, oh, this is, I'm going to debunk this or whatever. As time went on, you actually find that the power of the mind is pretty incredible, and that you can, even in human behavior or physiology or immunology or whatever, like the power of the mind is pretty incredible.
It has infinite power. It has all the power of the entire universe. It's just our physical vehicle and that consciousness is throttled in such a way that we don't have access to that full power, but it's there. And some people can train themselves. You think of the gurus of the world, or people like the ascended masters, all of the great religious figures of the world, they had that ability to bring that in more.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember thinking, because I frequently step back into my old me shoes to kind of remember like what it was like or how I would respond to something. And I remember because I would see this in my professors or see this in my colleagues at the time, we would systematically dismiss things as anecdotes. And then you were okay with it, right? Like you weren't focused on this, so it wasn't a problem to you. So then fast forward to new me, though, it becomes a problem when there are so many anecdotes and there's so much evidence and there's so many witnesses. And so it's interesting to kind of, throttle between those two sides and be like, yes, I used to do that, dismiss it because it's just a story. But then you fast forward and there's all these incredible stories of all these extremely spiritual people who tap into things that we can't explain.
And that's normal reality. Look, we're in the dream. We're in the subdued kind of like lower bandwidth of existence. These people are existing in a higher bandwidth, but we can all get there. Every single human being on earth has the potential to get there. Right?
Yeah, I like the sound of that.
Well, the cool thing about your book, which is, again, an incredible book, is that the reader learns as you learn. Like, it's the story of your life. You're unfolding, you're blossoming, you're metamorphosizing, all of those wonderful words. And as you're reading it, you're gaining that knowledge that comes from each step in the development process. But as you were experiencing this, as you started to have these experiences, you went to intuitives more to find deeper meaning in life. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I hit this crisis point, and and I was having an existential crisis of why do we go to work every day? Is this what all life is? Kind of like, what is the point of all of this? And
of course,
casual. I'm sure everyone asked themselves that at some point. So but it was hitting a crisis point for me for some reason, and then I just had readings from my mom, which were interesting, but my friends, we live in LA, and my best friends had gone to psychics before, and a few of them, and they, believed in it and they were totally comfortable believing in it. And I would roll my eyes, even though I was getting readings from my own mom. But so at this crisis point, they told me, like, why don't you come with us to one of our psychics? And these were people who they vetted, I guess, or felt like one of my friends, she turned one of my friends away twice because she said she couldn't read her energy and she didn't want to take her money. And so then they really trusted her. So I went with them, and we all went, and we would take notes. At first, we would take notes, and then we ended up going back a bunch of times, and we started recording the sessions and taking notes and comparing readings, because I was starting to get curious, like maybe they are vague things that they're saying, like who knows? This is a different context than what I had with my mom. Like, I'm paying this person,
right.
Maybe they want me to come back. So we started doing that and switching them with each other. And they were pretty specific to each of us, to each individually. And we also noticed that some of us were more open than others and would get deeper readings. So like one of my friends was super spiritual, and I wrote about her in the book, but she's always approached by psychics and mediums. And every time she goes for a reading, like psychics give her so much information. And then one of my other friends was like very closed off and would always come away unimpressed, from the readings, being like, oh, she didn't say anything. So we noticed all these like interesting variables, to me, I was like, this is so interesting. But I noticed that some of the things that they said to me were so specific to my past, with really details of like cities and names and body parts and like things that had happened from my childhood, that there's no way that they could know. You can't find it online. Like I've never talked about it. I never will. Things, that there's no way that they could know, and they knew. And then that's when I knew. I was like, oh, this is something. And so then as a neuroscientist, I was like, where is information coming in from? And and like how does it come into their body and into their senses and into their consciousness, and how does it feel for them? And I just became curious in all those kinds of questions.
Wow. Yes, because that information does come from outside sources, whether it's the Akashic records, like there's some energetic storehouse, or if it's just consciousness itself and all information is entangled in some quantum way. I'm not really sure, but it is coming from outside and you have to tune into it. And some people are born with this incredible ability to tune into it, but every human can be trained to tune into it because it is our natural state to perceive that information.
Yeah. So I just got curious about that and started interviewing them. And then I started reaching out. I didn't think there had been any research done on this. So at first I think that was a possibility. But then I heard this interview. Like I wasn't reading anything spiritual yet at the time. I was just going to these readings. But then coincidentally, I was listening to Chelsea Handler's podcast, and she had a psychic medium on, but Chelsea was a skeptic. And so I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then the psychic medium was Laura Lynn Jackson, and she mentioned this institute that had tested her. And she's like, I work with scientists. So then I scrambled and I was like, what scientists? Like, what is this institute? What work have they done? Like maybe they already have the answers that I'm seeking.
Yeah. Like they have the research, the data, it's all right there.
Yeah. So I reached out to one of the co-founders, and he gave me a huge reading list and told me, of course he's real. He said it's real, and we've been studying it for hundreds of years, and there's a lot of evidence. It's just not mainstream. It's hard to find. So he gave me a huge reading list. And then when I started doing that, started diving into those and pulling up the actual scientific papers, because I can read them, I was like, let me see, let me read it myself.
Sure.
And then I was like, he's right. Oh my God. Like there's been a lot of research done, and it's used a lot of methods that we use in normal neuroscience and psychology. There had been so many studies that there had been meta-analyses, what we call, and reviews, which is when you pull a bunch of experiments together and like look at it as a whole, and then looking at effect size. So, it was pretty legitimate. And I was like, okay, if there's this much evidence for it, either our statistics and our experimental methods are wrong, or it's a real phenomenon. And since the evidence for it doesn't only come from lab experiments, it comes from real life, and in fact, real life experiences, there's way more evidential of it. For me, that was convergence of evidence, how I think of it in my mind. So for me, it was settled. But, for people who have a harder time with it, scientists, I say, okay, then our experimental methods and our stats need to be revised and looked at. And if you're going to put they're called psi studies in the literature, if you're going to put them through the ringer, then you have to put our research through the ringer too, because the level that they go to debunk those studies is really intense when we have so many psychology studies that are like total garbage.
Well, that's the thing. You bring this up in your book a lot, and I wanted to cover this. You do say, as a scientist, that science is a cult. You said that several times in your book, and a cult would dismiss contrary information that does not fall within the mainstream thinking, the mainstream paradigm of that field of science. This other data set. Now you're saying this is authentic scientific data. It's been vetted itself. The methods are the same methods that they use to generate data in other situations. So the methods are there, the studies are there, it's real scientific information, but the cult aspect kicks in and rejects that data. It debunks that data. It creates actually even fake science in some cases to debunk that data because of the danger, the potential danger to the thinking. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, I mean, as a former person who would have done that, it's not that it's intentional or nefarious. It's mostly that you don't know about the literature, just like I didn't know it existed. You don't know it exists. And then if someone sends you the review, most of us are so too busy to even read all the papers in our own fields. Like people rarely are like, yes, let me read a paper from another field. Like I don't have time, I'm like suffering as it is. So if you're not interested in it, right, it's hard. You're not aware of the research. If someone sent it to you, you may not be interested. Imagine like you have to be motivated to read like a boring paper,
Right.
like to plow through it. And then when you read it, that's what I'm saying though. If they did read it, it would raise some eyebrows. But again, they don't have time to sit and be upset about it because it's like I have to go back to grant writing and I have to go back to paying my graduate students. But if they did, the other problem is what I mentioned at the top of this interview, which is that we assume scientific materialism, which part of that is like physicalism is focusing on Newtonian physics, which is more not quantum physics, right? Which is more, so people will say it's not possible because it goes against the laws of physics, but that's not true. It goes against maybe the Newtonian ones, but it's totally in line with quantum physics. So, and we don't know everything in physics anyway. There's like new theories literally being proposed daily. And a lot of them are suggesting there's like no space-time and reality isn't real or we don't perceive it as real. And so anyway, the point is like neuroscientists don't spend a lot of time thinking about physics and reality, right? We're focused on the brain. And so if you give them a paper like that, it's hard for them to understand because that's why you need that whole, like, actually, we need to back up even further to the philosophy of science. And you have to address that first before your mindset can even understand what's happening. So believe me, and I went through all this and it was like a whole other crisis. It was like a new crisis. My existential one went out the window and I had an identity crisis and then I had multiple crises at once. So it's not nefarious. It's also like, I also just see it as like egos. I mean, most of it's egos.
Okay.
Like scientists love being smart people. I say this as one who loved being smart and loved pretending that I knew everything. And like the last thing I wanted was for someone to show me something I didn't know or understand. Like we don't like, they don't like that. It's not an attack on them. That's the way we are. That's the psychology of humans, right? Like
it's the paradigm.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when I was going through it, I was like, attacking myself, my old self, I was like, God, open your mind, but then now that I'm at the other end, I mean, I understand that they don't have the time and stuff for it, but if there is somebody who's looked at everything and just won't admit it, I mean, that's
real. There are people that have done that though, that are actively suppressing some of this information. For what ends? I mean, it's probably not everyone, but it does happen, I would say. It's just like the book Forbidden Archaeology with Michael Cremo. In that field, it's the same way. There's all of these archaeological findings that seem to dispute our human history, and yet it gets suppressed there as well. So tell me, though, about then your journey into discovering reincarnation. Many Lives, Many Masters. The book changed your life. Let's tap into that a little bit. Yeah,
so that came from the same podcast interview between Chelsea Handler and
I love podcasts. We love podcasts. They're the best.
Oh my God, that one podcast episode, which was, it just fell in my lap because I wasn't trying to read anything spiritual. So in that episode, I think they just mentioned the book in passing, kind of like Many Lives, Many Masters. Everyone should read it. It's such a great book. And then Chelsea tells this funny story of how she got in a fight with someone, like one of her friends was telling her, you should read it. And she got in a fight with them over dinner being like, that's stupid. That's ridiculous. That's not real. I'm not going to read it. And then she right after dinner got on a plane to fly to LA. And the book was in the what's it called, the seat pocket in the seat in front of her. And so she read it on the way home, right after getting into this fight with her friend. And then she's like, this book is amazing. Everyone needs to read it. So I heard them saying this. So I ordered it, and they said it was a psychiatrist case study. So I ordered it. I didn't think it was spiritual, although I should have known from the context of the conversation. But I ordered it, it arrived, and I started reading it. It's, Brian Weiss was like a Yale and Columbia educated psychiatrist, atheist, skeptic, wasn't interested in anything paranormal. And he tells the story of this patient that he sees. He's trying to heal her, tries regression, and she spontaneously starts describing past lives. And then, but the important part is that she starts healing while she'll tell the story of a past life, die in some horrible way. And then when she comes back, it relieves her of some current day symptom, like being scared of the dark or being scared of drowning or anxiety or whatever, and where no other treatment had helped her before. So nice. I was really interested because if you read the book too, it's like a cute, because it's short, like cute little introduction into the topic. Because he's kind of like confounded too. Like, he's like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm just going to record the session and she's healing and I don't know why it's happening. And then he just goes with it. He's like, we're just going to do it. It's healing her. And then in the sessions, he has these quote unquote master spirits come through her. And yes. I just thought it was so interesting because he gets these messages delivered to him, and then she doesn't remember it. She doesn't even believe in reincarnation. She's Catholic. So all this weird stuff happens in the book. And I can't remember. I think he mentioned something about psychics, or he mentioned I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was something about the master spirits that, that I remember. It was them telling him, like, souls choose to come to Earth to learn lessons, and you come back again and again, so you reincarnate. And Laura Lynn Jackson had told that on the podcast, and now I was reading it in the book, and in all of the psychic readings that I had gotten, they had mentioned that, but it went over my head because I didn't know anything about reincarnation. So in the readings that I got before I even heard this podcast, they would say things like soul group, this is a soul lesson, and I would just ignore it because I was like, I don't know what that means. Like it just went over my head. But I remembered that they would say things and I would be like, oh, they would say this is a past life thing. And I would be like, what? I don't know. Like I was like, oh, okay. So I guess if you believe in reincarnation, that's what that would mean, but I don't. So then after I heard them talk about on the podcast, and I read it in his book, and then I was like, wait a minute. So I went back to my readings to put them into this new context of understanding of this spiritual framework of like, oh, like we're allegedly souls, and we come back and we learn lessons, and it's to evolve. And then the readings made a lot more sense with that context.
I mean, that is the true story, though. I mean, that is the human experience. We are these souls. You go through cultures. You have these psychedelic experiences as humans. Like you go there, you understand that we come back again and again and again. Unless
so I got curious about it. Yes. And I started reading, and I was like, this is interesting. There's a lot of,
Well, it really raised your frequency. It opened you up a little bit more. It raised your consciousness. You are now perceiving and adapting this new information about reincarnation. That's an evolutionary process. This whole book is an evolutionary process. It's actually the story of your evolutionary process, and it's so beautiful. I absolutely love it. And I just wanted to touch on really quick is the bodhisattva aspect. The bodhisattva, do you know about that?
I think so.
Okay, so, praise God. Praise the mystery. I love that I get to tell you this. The bodhisattva in Buddhist tradition is the person that goes through the life cycles over and over and over and gets to the nirvana stage, ready to go. They're saying, hey, you can come on in. And the bodhisattva says, wait, I could, but I'm not going to go until we all go. And then they come back and they reincarnate as powerful people, the bodhisattvas, who lead people, who help to raise people's vibration, who choose to help people evolve so we can all get to nirvana, the bodhisattva.
I didn't know that. I'm gonna look that up later.
I can't believe I get to enlighten you on that. Definitely take the deep dive. That's something that you talk about a lot in this book, is as you came into contact with these new concepts, you had that spark, you felt that charge when you received the information. So then you would take the deep dive, and you took several deep dives pretty much when you had each individual experience.
Yeah. I would it was like a, well, honestly, it felt like before this, which is why I was in an existential crisis, is because it felt like my soul was dead, or it felt like nothing excited me anymore. And then suddenly, these topics were like filling me with excitement and passion that I hadn't known for a long time. But then that's where the identity crisis came in, because I was like, I can't, because I had such a strong scientist ego and so much self-value and worth tied up in that I was like, I can't believe this excites me. I was so disappointed in myself. I was so, it was hard. It was hard. I was like, I can't believe this is what I'm interested in. And it was interesting because it was genuinely the only thing that was interesting to me. And it would like I said, it was like my soul was aflame with excitement.
Well, that's just because
so confusing.
Well, you're in the matrix. Look, you're in the false reality, the reality that humans created that's on top of a reality that already existed. That's the Earth's reality, the universal reality, the true synchronistic reality of the universe. This reality that we're in now, the human created world, it's an illusion, and it only exists because all of us together are co-creating it. We're all agreeing in a holographic way, like a quantum hologram. We're all agreeing that this is reality and it has to be that way. And that's the only thing. The only problem is, as humans, we forgot, most of us have forgot that we built that on top of something. And we think that our thing is the only thing in town, and it's not.
Yeah. That was hard. It took a while. It took a while to integrate. It took a very long time to integrate and be okay with it. And, but I'm glad that it worked out, because it was very, very exciting. And I kept diving deep and sharing it with others because I was too excited to not share.
That's usually what happens when you get involved with these universal truths and they activate you, they raise your vibration, you evolve. You naturally, as a loving human, as a being literally made out of love, you want to help other people evolve. You want to share that love. That's the bodhisattva. That's that energy of like, let's all get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have flipped a few people around me.
I bet. Your energy is really awesome. It's just beautiful. It's radiant. I feel like everyone around you feels like they love being around you, right? Is that something you hear a lot?
I hope so. I think so. Yeah. It's definitely better now than it was before. I mean,
well, one thing I wanted to ask you is, as you were developing, I'm reading this book and I'm getting your story. As you were developing, did you notice, and especially when you were reading about all of these studies that the government did and the various psi research that's been going on, did you feel your own perceptive abilities expand? Did you feel like you started to pick up information from other people in that way?
Oh, yeah. I opened up a lot. I mean, I had always had precognitive dreams, but I ignored them. And then, or they kind of died down, or I ignored them. I'm not really sure, but somewhere, after my scientific training, and then they came back, full force. And then I started learning tarot because I was really interested in the symbolism. And for some people that I read for, they tell me it's like crazy. Like what I'm saying is like, I don't know.
Right.
But apparently whatever I say resonates with them and is like very on the mark. And I've also definitely my sleep. So there's been a few instances where I've had dreams that when I wake up are like sticking on to me, and I can't stop, thinking, or the energy or whatever. And then I'll just tell like the next person I see, which will be like, I was hiking with a friend one day, or one time we were on a trip with one of my friends. Oh, sorry, it was a group of friends. And then one of my friends, I told her the dream. Anyway, the person I tell, usually they're like staring at me like I'm crazy, because whatever the dream was, it was for them. It was like something going on in their life. And that they're like, how did you, like, what? It'll be very specific to their lives.
So you felt that expand, and now you're doing tarot readings. Did I hear that correctly?
I mean, just
for people.
Fun.
Okay.
Just for me and my friends.
Your friends. Those are other people.
Well, yeah, for them.
Wow, man, you've come a long way. This is incredible, but there's still so much more to go. It never actually ends, by the way. It just keeps going from plateau to plateau to plateau. And just when you think you're right at this is really high up here, then it goes up a whole nother level.
Yeah, you can tell. I'm curious how you noticed your intuitive abilities or developed them, or
I was born with them. You talk about this on the show very rarely, but I'll talk about it now. I do have my own intuitive abilities. I'm very psychic in the sense I'm good at reading people. And if people are upset, if there's an emotional charge related to their thoughts, I pick that up really strongly, especially if it's related to me. And people, and I'm very empathetic. So I've learned over time to dial that in to where I could just kind of pull things out of people, read people's auras, read people's energy.
That's cool.
And it just developed over time. And as I was a young man, I was very interested in science fiction and concepts like that. And so I kind of reverse engineered my whole experience through fiction and just being exposed to the concepts that were woven into the fictional stories. And then you go do more research like you did. And then you find out those universal truths. And that's part of it. But the interesting thing though, right, is like all of these things, even science itself, they're all based on human perceptions. And just because we are verifying it based on our perceptions, and we can say, yes, that's that way, or that's not that way, that doesn't necessarily mean it's correct in the universal sense, because it's all being filtered through the human experience.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the key points of neuroscience too, for sometimes dismissing these anomalous or exceptional human experiences, is because one of the key takeaways is the brain can't be trusted, because it can misperceive things, or it has filters, right? Like the way you perceive your reality is not actually accurate, because your brain, what happens is you have signals come in from your senses, but your brain interprets those signals, and the way it interprets is based on its past experiences, right? And just as like an example from childhood or something, like if you had an alcoholic parent, or I don't know, whatever, you had like a chaotic childhood home where you had to learn to be attuned to people's faces, like you had to watch your parents' faces closely to see if they were in a good or a bad mood, then you grow up with that, monitoring people's faces for subtle changes in their mood. And then as a result, you can miss things in your periphery. So that's, one way where a past experience fine-tunes your attention and your perception in your adulthood. So, and you have a lot of that going on from your entire, childhood. And then even everything that you go through today, new things can condition you. So your brain, it's all interpreted. And so it's kind of like, that's why in neuroscience, we never trust our brains really. But then at the same time, we say that our perceptions are only our perceptions are the truth. And it's kind of,
it's very contrary, I would say.
Yeah.
And that's what you were talking about in your book as the perceptual blindness, right?
Yes. Yeah. The perceptual blindness.
Perceptual blindness. Your brain only sees what it wants to see. I have some wonderful notes here. I always take notes when I read guest books, just so I really touch on all the things that you talked about. So you realize now, though, that you're not your body, you're in your body, right? And you is living light, right? And it's energy that doesn't die. You figured that out. What do you think scientists would say about that? The brain is just a mechanism. It's a filtering mechanism for that living light to exist within the framework of the body, within the third dimension on this planet.
Yeah, it's hard. So when I was learning all this stuff, that was the hardest thing to swallow. I remember when I read it, I was like, nope, I'm not going to, this is where I draw the line. And it took a lot of reading, and it took a lot. It took actually, I think William James. I had to go back to William James, who is a famous psychologist. He's actually, even in classic neuroscience, he's considered the father of modern day psychology. I had to go back to him because we talk about him so much in normal neuroscience, and they completely edited out the fact that he was into altered states of consciousness, and that he went to seances, and that he was a part of the Society for Psychical Research, and that he was interested in all of these things. So I was like, the father of modern day psychology was so much more open-minded than modern day psychologists and neuroscientists. So I had to go back to William James, who with Aldous Huxley and a lot of these earlier thinkers proposed that model, that maybe consciousness is an energy or something that filters through the brain. And when you take something like psychedelics, it's blown wide open. And I think that because of the psychedelic renaissance now, I write a newsletter about all this stuff. So I've tried to keep up with the literature, and there's new models being proposed about consciousness, which are not like material, or they are, some of them are materialist, but there's new models basically saying maybe there's a field of consciousness, and maybe it interacts with our physical brain. So there's all these models being proposed in academically peer-reviewed science journals.
That's amazing. I laugh because from my perspective, that's like so 101. That's like so like basic. Like it's like saying, oh, we're just about to find out that water's wet. And it's like, we're going to do all these studies to find out that water's wet. It's like
it helps to have these papers and models, though, because it's like, it's hard to say, hey, William James believed our brains are filters or whatever. It's hard to like propose these ideas and have people take them seriously without a model, because they'll be like, how does the brain filter it? How does it come in? Because we're so physical. Wouldn't we want to know? I mean, truly, like there must be a way we can understand.
I love the mechanics behind it. I mean, the metaphysics, you think of the metaphysics, the physics of meta, God, whatever that spiritual thing is.
But I think that, there are some really interesting models being proposed now. And I think with the psychedelic renaissance, I was just reading a paper the other week that was I just so appreciated that they even said this, that they were talking about the phenomenology of ayahuasca experiences, which means the people's subjective experience of it. Like, how do they describe the experience? And in the introduction, they even said, in these reports, people say that they encounter entities, that there's other dimensions, and da-da-da. And they say, we are not saying that we agree with that, but we are saying that we admit that science doesn't know everything. And just like we couldn't measure microwaves in the past, there may be things we can't measure yet. And I was like,
that sounds like a paradigm. Oh, that was incredible. Yes, it's a paradigm shift. I can't believe we just said that at the same time. Look, we're on the same frequency. We matched each other's frequency. That's why we're in the same place, because we are that living energy. And that is how we show up here. And psychology, I mean, yes, all of those incredible people did create it in the Western mind, but all of that psychology can be backed up to Hermetic philosophy. If you study Hermetic philosophy and Hermetic teachings, it's all there, which comes from, whatever was before that.
And I've had this conversation too with other scientists and there's a lot of, I've found huge communities of scientists who, have had what they call emergent experiences. And it's a common topic of conversation to say, hey, Western science is pretty arrogant. We keep refinding things that, was already in the text millennia ago. We just we act like it's a new knowledge and like it's a new finding, but it's really not. And that is the arrogance of Western science. But
But that's okay. It served a purpose. I mean, it had a function. It has a function. It just needs to adapt the new information. That's all.
Yeah, totally.
There's nothing really wrong with the methods. The only issue is when it gets stagnant and it decides not to evolve with the new information. That's the biggest thing, but that's okay. Science, we need it. Look at what it's given us. The only reason I'm able to have a Zoom conversation right now in real time is because of science and the wonderful inspiration that humans received. And inspiration is divine itself. I mean, it's channeling. You're channeling something from somewhere else into your mind and then bringing it into form. I mean, inspiration itself is coming from the divine. So you can't, it's all really, it's all that, whatever that is.
I've thought about that too, in terms of our society too, and this idea of progress and tradition, or progressive reform and kind of traditionalism. And you see that, and you need that, right? You need that tension, because you can't stay stuck in the past forever, but you also can't have things progress too rapidly, because people just can't keep up, or you'll have ideas floating away before you have a chance to use them. So it's like, you kind of need that tension. And this happens. There's like a famous book about, I forgot what it's called, something about the scientific revolutions. I should know, Thomas Kuhn or something. But anyway, it's about like how switches in paradigms in science take generations, because basically the old scientists have to die because they won't change their minds, sadly. And it just, there constantly are new paradigms in science. It just takes generations a little bit to flip.
Well, perhaps with that psychedelic renaissance that you're talking about, and I live in Oregon, so, those substances are decriminalized. What were once long-term jail felonies are now not. So we're in a psychedelic renaissance here. I know you're in LA. It's like that there. I mean, the entire West Coast, Canada, Colorado, all of these places, perhaps when we have that renaissance, that will coincide with quantum leaps of science. Like quantum leaps, instead of generations, will all just be evolving at this very high speed.
Yeah, I just wrote last week in the newsletter, I wrote about this, and I kind of posed the question, like, are we ready for all of the worldview flips that are about to happen with psychedelics? Because I read this paper that, it was pretty well known, but someone actually did the correlation and published the paper that if you take a psychedelic, you are more likely to have non-physicalist beliefs. Like, you come back with ideas that there are alternate realities, that spirits may exist, that consciousness survives death, that plants have consciousness, whatever. You come back with these ideas that are not physicalist. And there's a lot of metaphysical worldview flips that happen on psychedelics. And they also found a correlation in an improvement in well-being and mental health with that.
Well, yeah.
So the less scientific materialist, the less you believe in materialism, the happier you are, which I've been saying since I wrote my book. But I think that we are about to see that. I think we are about to see a lot of flips, and we'll see what happens.
Well, many of my guests that I've had on talk about this, I've had world-renowned guests that have talked about many of these subjects. We're moving into a new octave of existence. It's a new earth where, guess what? That thing that we were talking about, where you identify with light as your you're a living light, we're all going to be there. And when we're all identifying as light and we realize that we're just in these vehicles, that's what unites the earth. That's what brings us together. That's because it doesn't matter where your ancestry is from. It doesn't matter if you're a man, you're a woman, your gender, your age, if you're disabled, if you're not disabled, none of that matters. Our commonality, the thing that unites us, is the fact that we're living light. And when we all get that as humans, when we all awaken to that understanding, that's when we activate the united earth. That's when we are all together in love with each other. And it's going to be an incredible place. And that actually is our destiny. That's exactly where we're going.
Well, sounds lovely.
We're there. I mean, we're already there. We just have to expand our awareness to process that other information that's there. The information's there. We're just not able to process it, but we expand our processing ability. Then we can integrate that new information. We're going to be there. There's a magnetic field. The earth itself has its own magnetism and it's moving forward. We're just kind of part of it. right? So like evolution, life is for expansion and further expression, right? So like we're always expanding, we're always expressing ourselves in a more fuller way, even individually and as a species and the whole planet.
Yeah, I like it.
I bet you do, because you talked about your psychedelic experience. I just want to touch on this a little bit. You took some LSD, you mentioned this in your book, and you had an incredible experience, right? And you feel like that also helps you evolve a little bit.
Yeah. When I someone told me when I was doing my interview, someone had said, have you looked into psychedelics? And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, a lot of paranormal things can happen when people are on psychedelics. And I was like, what are they talking about? Because I didn't know anything about psychedelics.
Sure.
So I went to do another deep dive. So I went and read the entire literature on psychedelics. And I was so blown away by how healing these these medicines were, how, how much more they were than what we've been told or what I knew from my generation and from society. Like I thought that they were just hallucinatory drugs. And I was like, why would anybody want to take that? And then I read the literature and I thought, oh my God, like this is crazy. Like people come back from, especially the recent research shows that people come back and they'll describe this experience they had on a psychedelic as the most spiritual and meaningful experience of their life, usually top 5, above having a child or the death of a parent.
Right.
Like that powerful. And and healing, like improves depression, improves anxiety, improves PTSD. And so I was like, how could this be? So I was like, oh, I have to try it. so I tried. I was also interested in the 50s, 60s, and 70s before they were banned. Apparently, these were used by psychiatrists widely.
Yes.
And there was a manual online. I found like the LSD manual for therapists, and you take it and it allows access to all your subconscious beliefs. And you can just ask yourself, what do I need to face right now? And you'll get an answer. So I was so curious. I was like, I got to try this. So I got some LSD, had a friend with a friend, and we actually, she just babysat me.
Nice.
And I did it. And then it was crazy. I mean, the psychology part of it worked. And I think I wrote about that in the book.
Yes.
If I didn't, I wrote about it in the newsletter for sure. And it was true. I just said, what's my biggest problem right now? And I got an answer. And clear, a very clear answer. But then I understood also how everything was alive. I felt interconnected to everything. I felt so much love. I'm already an emotional person because I'm a Pisces, but the emotions were amplified a million. And I was amazed at what humans can experience. And I had never thought about that before. It totally changed my experience as a human being. When I came back, I was just like, wow, I've never even thought about experience or the depth of an emotion or the range of emotion or how it connects me to others. And all of that happened, on the psychedelic, and also felt energy up and down my spine and through my body, to the point where I had to move and dance to get it out. And I had never felt anything like that before.
Wow.
So
This is cool.
Just a really beautiful experience.
Yes, this sounds beautiful. I mean, I'm glad you had that experience, but I want to point out in your book that you said something, because in your studies of learning about various topics, the paranormal, the psychedelic, all of these really cool topics, you learned that fairies, elves, and gnomes were real, and they are. But you noticed that during your LSD trip, you did not have that experience. But I'm here to tell you something. You will have that experience, as I have had that experience, if you smoke DMT. The LSD isn't going to get you to the elves. The DMT gets you to the elves.
I haven't done it, but I've read that.
Okay, yeah. Look, have you taken any other psychedelic journey since then?
Oh yeah. I've done shrooms. Okay. I did 5-methoxy DMT, which was
the toad stuff.
Yeah, the toad, which was insane.
I bet it was mind blowing. I've only done that once in my life, and I had a complete near-death experience. I went up, and they said, "Hey, it's not your time. You got to go back." And because
I had a near-death experience too.
Wow.
what was great about that was that it was I had the ego death, like
Yes.
I didn't exist anymore. I became all of the universe, all of space and time. And that was cool too, because that was, again, like all of these experiences you get on psychedelics, you can't imagine them like before in your
Right.
normal 3D reality. You can't imagine it. And just that is incredible. Like, and then you come back and it's hard to talk about it because you can't explain, put it into words. But just the fact that you felt like I wasn't a body, I was everything, and it stays with you forever.
Forever.
Forever. It's crazy. And mind expanding, literally, right? I mean,
Yes.
you view things and experience things differently. So I think 5-MeO-DMT is extremely powerful. I think people should approach it with extreme caution.
Yes, the other form, the NN-DMT, that is the one that will take you to the elves. That one, like you said, it gives you that true experience because, as you may know, DMT is stored in your brain. And Native Americans, when they do sweat lodge and things like that, that's how they activate the DMT in their brain. And then they have those extra dimensional experiences.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's how some of these mystical people are having these experiences seemingly without substances. They're figuring out techniques, whether it's extreme meditation or other methods, to activate the best substances that you can find, one that are already built into your human body.
Yeah, I would love to try and then DMT one day. And
it's out there. It's legal. It's legal in Colorado. Is it? Isn't it amazing? Oh, wow. They legalized it. And I highly, highly recommend it. As a person, I've personally taken hundreds of LSD trips in my life and dozens of DMT experiences. I've never done ayahuasca or some of the other things, and shrooms, of course, but I was a big fan of LSD for a good stretch of my life. And it's very healing. It's very powerful. And it does cause a permanent frequency shift.
LSD, it does really?
Well, I'm just saying, like your frequency, what you're vibrating as, whatever that number is, or however you can quantify that, it then changes that you're vibrating a different way.
It's really, I mean, that's why I included it in the book, because it was so important and so beautiful and so life-changing. And I mean, I really just think so truly important. And I wasn't the kind of person that would do something like that. I wasn't very open. I was very type A and very like, no, thank you.
Well, I'm glad you've come around because human beings throughout history, we've evolved with these substances. It's just this current age, this human age, that kind of creates the stigma around those things.
Yeah. I just saw a great talk by Jules Evans about ecstatic experiences and the awkward relationship that Western culture has with ecstatic experiences and how we don't understand them. And, they're just labeled as illnesses and, psychosis or whatever. It's medicalized in our culture, which is such a shame.
Yes. There are some outlets in Western culture for the ecstatic experience, at least in America. There was, and still kind of is, there was this rock band that created a place for a magical ritual to take place with hundreds of thousands of people sometimes, where people would collectively, tens of thousands of people, maybe 50,000 people at a time, would take psychedelics together at this rock concert. And they would focus on the act as a shaman, and the music itself became a shaman because it was mostly improvisational music, and it would guide 50, 60,000 people into an ecstatic state. And of course, there'd be tens of thousands of people dancing at every show. And that did happen in Western culture. Do you know who I'm talking about?
The Grateful Dead.
Yes. Very good. I'm glad you caught that. That is what happened in Western culture. There was an outlet for that.
Yeah.
But alas, that's not as much anymore.
Yeah. I wish I could have gone to a concert.
The scene, that family, that world still exists. There's other bands. We've actually covered that on this show.
Okay, well, when I go back, through the episodes.
Episode 48, it's a good one. And Ram Dass, tell me some of the people that you've learned from on this journey. You're coming to this place now. You're actually way more developed than you were at the start of the book. You're so much more developed. What are you learning from now? Like, where are you at?
Oh, yeah. Well, some of the spiritual, Ram Dass, I just loved Ram Dass. I found him early on. I mean, when I was reading about the psychedelic literature, and then I found there's, a podcast run by his foundation, and he just resonates with me. I just love listening to him. It's so approachable, sometimes, and I still feel this way. Sometimes the spiritual stuff can go over my head, now I understand it a lot better. But it just didn't resonate with me. A lot of it was just too abstract, or I don't know. I just didn't get it. But with Ram Dass, he helped be that bridge. He helped me understand these concepts better, and the bridge between psychedelic experiences and spiritual experiences, and how it all ties together. So I still listen to him. I still listen to him all the time. Yeah, because it's it never, you can re-listen to, and you get something new from it every time. But, I still listen to them so that they seep in, because I feel like I'm still not, I don't understand everything that they say. So I just keep listening.
That's how you learn. It's repetition. And then you integrate that new information. The evolution takes place. You go back with that new information integrated, and you experience it in a different way. And then the other things that potentially you feel like went over your head, you're now processing because you've evolved.
But it is kind of like yoga. I remember my teacher, I have been doing yoga for many years. And, she always said, when we're doing a pose and you don't know how to do it, just try. And she's like, it doesn't matter. For 50 sessions, you could try and not get the pose. But every time you try, you're building something. And then one day it just happens. And I feel like that's true because I've experienced that in yoga, but it's also true with the spiritual concepts where it's it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And then one day something happens in your life where you're like, oh, you have an epiphany of, oh my God, I get it. Now I get that concept. And that has happened. So I just keep listening so that keeps happening.
Yes. That's myself as well. I never stop growing, and sometimes the guests I have on radically changed my life, because after the episode, after I have the recording, they've given me so much information that I've actually grown from the experience. And that's happened dozens of times now. It's part of the human experience. That's what evolution is. We're here to evolve, and we've got such an incredible destiny as humans. We're so amazing. We're this incredibly powerful being on this planet. No other being can do what we do. So we have to figure out how to tame that and use that to create a place for everyone, a place of love, right?
Yeah, hopefully it would be a much nicer place than what we have co-created currently.
Well, it's just about integrating new information. Like you said, with that renaissance, with other things happening, people will evolve, and then we just keep adapting. We keep adapting. Some people feel like there could be a solar flare or some sort of situation that activates everyone's DMT in their brain at the exact same time. And
that'd be crazy.
And then we have this massive, truly frequency shift where all matter and everything moves to a different octave.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
That would be something.
And your book was so dense. There's so many great things that you covered. I want to just really make sure that we talked about everything. Angels. Tell me what you think about angels. And tell me what you think about extraterrestrials, because you did mention it in your book, because you did do all of those deep dives. And now you know that it's real. They're here on this planet right now, with us. They're here. And there's evidence that's coming through mainstream sources all the time. You're seeing it get released. What do you think about that? What do you think about now as a scientist? Now you have to integrate this new information of we're not alone in the universe.
Yeah, I think that, so it's funny because at the beginning, or, whatever, at the point in the journey where I intersected with this information, I was resistant to it. And I was like, oh, I'm not, the people I was speaking with would bring up UAPs, right? Unidentified aerial phenomena or whatever. And then they would talk to me about consciousness and all this. And at that point, I was like, oh, no, I'm not interested in UAPs or UFOs. Don't even bring it up. I was like, not on purpose. I just genuinely didn't care. And I was like, if you start talking about it, my eyes will glaze over and you'll lose me. But then yeah, of course, what did I do? I went to read more books because that's what I do. And I, found that Carl Jung had talked about this. I found that there was all this literature thinking around UAPs and how and consciousness and 3D reality and how our inner states are mirrored by the outer states. And so all of that literature started to help me understand better how it's all connected. And I think that once you just think, if you like, sometimes if I'm looking at reality and imagine all the forms dissipating into energy, and then imagine, beyond 3D, kind of like what you see in a psychedelic state, a high one, what you see beyond that. If you're looking at that, then there being other conscious entities is really not a big deal, because what are the odds that we are the only ones here?
Fairly low.
Low odds. Okay, so it's like not that big of a stretch. But then it's funny when you come back into 3D. For me, this is how it is. When I come back into the 3D world and someone says to me angels and aliens, I still cringe, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. But the truth is, like, there probably are other beings, there probably are other dimensions, and they probably do interact with us in ways that we can't understand.
Oh yeah.
And based on the fact that humans are not that bright, they probably are way smarter than us, and we should probably listen to them. But who knows?
Well, we're just at where we're at. Like, this is our stage of development. There are other civilizations out there. There's actually countless civilizations out there in the universe that are just farther along the path. And there are some that are behind where we're at all over the universe. And it's not that they're smarter. We're just here. But the thing is that we're literally on a ball of mud that's suspended by electromagnetic forces in an ocean of truly space, like space. And you look out and you see the stars, that, like, right behind me, you can see these stars. That every single one of them could be a solar system with planets. And you're talking an almost inquantifiable number. In fact, it's always expanding. Of course, there's life out there. Of course there is. And they're just our family. We're just one family. And that's when we get that also, we shift from a regional consciousness, from Earth consciousness, to a galactic consciousness. When we don't identify as, well, I'm from, like me, Portland. I'm from Portland. No, you're not from Portland. You're not from Oregon. Those don't even exist. America doesn't even exist. You're on Earth. You're an Earthling in a galaxy. That's what you are. That's galactic consciousness. That's part of our evolutionary journey as humans as well.
Yeah. And I think sometimes I think too of, I read so many different theories sometimes that I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know what's real. But I like that story. Like, I have an energy healer that I go to, and she will tell me, like, oh, your light family is sending you, like, love. And I like that idea. I like it.
Well, we have ancestors. Ancestors, their energy doesn't die. Science tells everyone that. They're all there guiding us. Our ancestors are our guardian angels. Perhaps we evolved. Maybe some people did make the choice to not be a bodhisattva and chose to go into that place and take on an angelic form. I often think that that's what we should aspire to as humans. Let's try to act like angels. Let's raise our vibration. Let's raise our frequency to be that.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thought. I like that. I agree.
Yeah. Well, we've had such an incredible conversation. Your book is so amazing. I just want to keep going, but I know we could go for probably hours. But let's tell people where to find you. Your website is monasobhaniphd.com. So that's monasobhaniphd.com. You can check her out there. You can find everything. She has this book, which gets my highest recommendation. I urge you to find this book on Amazon or wherever you get books. these days and find proof of spiritual phenomena, a Neuroscientist Discovery of the Ineffable Mysteries of the Universe. I mean, with a title like that, you're already there. You're like, you have it in your hand, just complete. I actually read the Kindle version. And so it's out there as well. You can get it on your device. You know, it's the future. We have these devices.
And I read the audiobook too, myself.
You mean you read it like it's your voice?
Yeah, it's my voice. Yeah.
Cool. That's also another form. And she has a Facebook, Instagram that you can find out there. And she has a newsletter, it sounds like. You can definitely check that out. That's on the website, I imagine, right?
Yeah, it's on the website.
Okay. And, you know, we have so many listeners around the world. Your voice is going out to a lot of people in 163 countries. What would you like to leave people with? You had this journey. You came from rational, three-dimensional reality, and you integrated new information. You evolved, you've expanded, you've grown, and now you're where you're at now. What would you like to impart to people? What would you like to tell people?
Yeah. Well, my personal mantra now is just stay radically curious, because I feel like that's what really allowed me to open up and to keep opening up. And every time that I think I have something figured out, I just remind myself that I probably don't, and that I should still stay curious and keep learning. And I try to, I try to tell people that, because I think it's the best way to approach things is just curiosity. Right.
Don't have a closed mind, right? Just keep all ideas and all awarenesses open. Really, you should just keep your perceptions in like a superposition, right? You don't exactly agree, you don't disagree. Nothing's concrete. Exactly. You're just like in this superposition, right? That's where we should be.
Quantum state.
Yes, a quantum state. Wow. Well, on that note, I want to thank you for being here. You've been an incredible guest.
Thank you so much for having me. It was very fun.
Well, we're going to have you back, of course. This is just the beginning. And people, please check out this book. It's so amazing. Check out her website, because like I said, it's her story. And you're going to learn about all of these different topics and what she learned as she's learning it. And if you know someone that's maybe on the fence, that is being introduced to these concepts, maybe for the first time, give them Mona's book. Let it be a guidebook for them. They might find something reflected back in that book that might help them grow faster. So do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote it for that. I mean, I wrote it as the book I wish I had when I was going through this.
Wow. Well, we tapped into that right at the end. So that's amazing. Well, Mona, thank you for being here. Please hold through the outro music. And everyone, we will see you next week. Midnight on Earth.